Today we're going to be looking at an older Hasegawa offering, the A-7D Corsair and Bicentennial markings. Now, this is an older kit, but it still holds up against some of the newer offerings. So let's go ahead and open her up. Now, right away, you can see a lot of the trademarks of Hasegawa. A lot of detailing, fine panel lining, and overall good craftsmanship. Now, since this is an older kit, a lot of the details aren't up to the current standards, as you would expect. One place you can easily see that is here in the cockpit to begin with, as well as even more apparently here in the ejection seats, as the detailing is overscaled and just feels and looks a little just not right. It's probably the best way to describe it. But fortunately, other detail areas, they do a much better job, such as here in the landing gear bays and the equipment bays on both sides of the aircraft, which is a nice inclusion, even though I would say probably about 99% of us are probably going to close those up. It's still nonetheless nice to have as an option. Now, this kit does have a two-piece intake ramp, and I can speak from personal experience, having built another A-7D from Hasegawa, is that this is a pain to get cleaned up and looking decent. And in this particular case, it also has some ejector pin marks that will require cleaning up as well. So, I mean, that's one area. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot you can do. It's just a bit of a pain to clean up and get looking right. Continuing on, the main gear doors do have some ejector pin marks as well. Fortunately, they're not quite as noticeable, but again, I'm not sure how far down the line this particular boxing was, so again, something to be aware of. Nose gear is probably one of the weaker areas, at least on this particular sprue. Detailing is not quite as good as the main gear, and again, not a whole lot can be said on the exhaust, as there's just not any real detail there. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, next up we've got the detail sprues for the D model that Hasegawa included, including the various components as well as the cockpit. Again, detailing is passable by today's standards, but it's still a little muddy. Nose gear is nicely done though, so that's a definite plus for it. Moving on, we have our wingtip halves, which they do, as this does have a bit of a complex wing build, as well as the corresponding forward slats. We also have a pilot figure, which is nicely rendered, and the munition stations. Next up, we have our upper fuselage half, or piece, sorry, and the two wing halves. Again, this does have a complex wing build because it has the option to display the wingtips folded up. Granted, on the D, since it is an Air Force model, you're not going to see that as often, but again, it's a holdover from the naval versions. We also have our leading edge slats rendered as separate pieces. Fortunately, they did it as two separate parts instead of just one single part, so it will make construction a little more difficult. And we have our flaps. You're given two munition sprues, including a sidewinder and a multi-ejector rack. Not a whole lot to be said here. Obviously, you will need to source the rest of the munitions from the Hasegawa sets or from other kits. Set also includes 2 fuel tanks, which are basic Hasegawa quality. Not a whole lot to be said there. Detailing on the main gear wheels are also quite nice. Moving on to the canopy. It's very nicely done. Definitely for a 1/48 scale, it does seem big, but that is true to life. Overall, they did a nice job casting the clear parts. Now, let me get all this stuff back in. Now, main draw for this particular boxing is the decals for Bicentennial aircraft. Now, this particular scheme is on the more challenging side, as once we get to the painting instructions, you'll see more clearly. But there's almost no white for the decals, as the overall color is gloss white. The only exception being here on the stars, which for some reason they decided to go ahead and reproduce. I personally think it would have made more sense just to have those as blanks and let the underlying white show through. But other than that, everything's good register, nicely printed. Let's move on. So this particular kit definitely has a complex assembly. Cockpit straightforward enough, but once you get into some of the more detailed areas, such as the air brake, something which if you do decide to display it open, good luck to you if you can get that to go together and look right. Just, it's a little over engineered, and really just it's going to be difficult to do. Other than those areas, other main areas to look out for are going to be all the landing gear bays, as there's a lot of small parts that need to go together, and getting everything so that it fit and jive together is going to be on the more challenging side. You're also going to want to look out for on the wing folds and making sure you're using the right wing insert parts. Now, moving on to the painting. Since, as I mentioned before, this is a challenging paint scheme. While you are given some decals for some of these curves, however, they don't include the entire part. So that's going to make masking and getting that right a lot more challenging. Now, obviously, the best way to do that is probably going to be try and mask as close to the panel lines as possible, but still, getting everything aligned right is going to be really challenging. Now, it is nice that the paint scheme is overall gloss white, so that should simplify the bulk of the painting process, but still, it's going to take a lot of work to do to get it to look right and get everything properly together. So, overall, this kit definitely shows its age. I'm not exactly sure when Hasegawa first put out their Corsairs, but does it ultimately look like a Corsair? Yes. Now it does have some issues in terms of accuracy, but to my understanding, I believe it was Kinetic that put out the most recent Corsair also has some issues. So really it comes down to obviously which one has either the markings you want to build or is in your price range. I believe the Hasegawa Corsairs are a little cheaper right now. Don't quote me on that. So that was a look at Hasegawa's 1/48 scale A-7D Corsair and Bicentennial markings. Until next time.